Okay guys, the first step you're going to need to do is cut off both the top and the bottom of your water bottle. You can use scissors to do this, or in my particular case, I'm using an X-Acto knife to do it. Once you finish cutting them off, just go ahead and trim up the edges to make them smooth. The next step is to make the petals. You're going to need to cut each one of the petals 2 inches wide. You're going to start by cutting at the base all the way up to the opening of the water bottle. And then once you finish cutting them, go ahead and splay them out. You're going to do this for both the top and the bottom of the water bottle. Now, when I started making this, I thought I had enough time to make 2 different flowers, but by the time everything was said and done, I ended up only making 1, so that's why you see 2 pieces. Once you've gotten the petals all cut out, go ahead and trim the ends into your desired shape. Once you're finished trimming up all of the petals, it's time to turn them into flowers. You can use either a ball of aluminum foil, or in my particular case, I'm using a styrofoam Easter egg. I cut the egg in half, and then I'm going to be gluing the pointed end of the Easter egg to the back of the flower. I do this by using hot glue. Go ahead and place a dab of glue on the back of the flower and then press the styrofoam ball in place. Now you're going to need a 8-inch piece of 18 gauge floral wire. Start off by poking a small hole into the styrofoam ball, pull it back out, add a little bit of hot glue, and then reinsert it and hold it until the glue dries. Now we're going to be making the stems. What I use is green crepe paper. You're going to want to fold it multiple times until it gets down to a more handleable shape. And then you're going to snip it so that it looks a bit like blades of grass, just to create a little bit more texture on the stem of the flower. You'll see this here in a moment once I get it going onto the stem. Okay, let's go ahead and grab some Mod Podge so we can add this crepe paper to the stem of the flower. I like to work in small sections. I went ahead and coated half of the stem with Mod Podge, and then I began to wrap the stem with the crepe paper. You're going to want to start at the top and work your way all the way down to the bottom of the flower. Now that we got that done, it's time to make the flower pot. We're going to use a second water bottle for this. Just like we did with the first water bottle, we're going to cut off both the top and the bottom of the bottle. You're going to need to get a snake of aluminum foil. Just do that by grabbing a piece of aluminum foil and crunching it up into a snake shape. We're going to hot glue that to the mouth of the opening of the bottle. Trim off any of the excess. And then we're going to go back in with a second sheet of aluminum foil, fold it over to create a smooth exterior, because this shape is going to become the pumpkin for the base of our flower pot. Start off by gluing the folded in half aluminum foil around the mouth of the bottle, smoothing as you go. And then trim off any excess. Now that we've got that all out of the way, go ahead and crunch up the bottom of the aluminum foil into the mouth of the bottle. And then you're going to grab a hard piece of metal. I used, in this particular case, a screwdriver to make the ridges for the pumpkin. You just have to press firmly. And this is what it should look like once you get it finished. Now that we're all done with that, it's time to glue the two pieces together. Go ahead and place a large dab of hot glue on the base and attach the two pieces together and hold them for a few minutes until the glue cools off and dries. The next step is to coat the exterior of the flower pot. We're gonna do this with some Mod Podge and the black crepe paper. You're gonna grab your Mod Podge and coat the entire top of the flower pot with Mod Podge. Then you're going to take your crepe paper and go ahead and run that crepe paper all the way around the top rim of your flower pot. Tack it down as you go so that you can keep a smoother exterior. Make sure that when you use the Mod Podge that your brush is heavily saturated in Mod Podge, because if you leave it too dry, it'll end up tearing off the crepe paper and causing you a bigger mess. Once we get the top done, we're gonna go ahead and do the bottom. To do the bottom, you'll coat it in Mod Podge, and then you're gonna go around the exterior with the same crepe paper. Again, tacking it down with a heavily saturated brush. Now, to do the base, it's a little bit tricky, so that you don't end up with a big wad of crepe paper at the base of your flower pot. Go ahead and fringe it before you put it down. And then just tack it down with a heavily saturated brush with Mod Podge. Now it's time to work on the base. We're going to do the base the same way we did the top. You're going to coat it heavily in Mod Podge and then cover it with the crepe paper. Now that we've finished up with the pot, let's go ahead and work back on this flower. We're going to create the eyeball for the center of our flower. You'll do this by using the other half of the Easter egg or a crushed up piece of tin foil. Just put a little hot glue on it and then press it down into the center. Now let's paint those petals. I chose to use this oxblood color, but you can really paint them any color that you'd like. You're going to want to paint them in several coats, several light coats, and give them enough time to dry in between each coat. If you can afford it, you could try using an enamel paint. It'll adhere better to the plastic. If you can't afford to use an enamel paint like what I'm using, go ahead and put some Mod Podge down first before you start painting. These petals took me 3 coats to get that kind of coverage. Now it's time to work on that eyeball. I'm using a white exterior chalk paint for mine, but you can really use any color white that you'd like. This actually ended up taking me 2 coats to get it completely covered, and the little glittery bubbles on the outside of the egg made a really neat effect. Now I'm going to go in and add some detail. I'm using this deep brick red color by Craftsmart, and I'm just painting inside the center of each one of the petals. Now, I know I spent all the time painting these in this brick red and oxblood color, but when I got all finished up, I ended up trimming the petals down a little bit more and painting the whole thing pink. You'll see that once I get to the finished product. Okay, now it's time to paint the center of the eye. I used the black paint by Craftsmart to do this. And then to make the iris, I used a yellow chalk paint. But really, you could use any color you'd like. I just had that one laying around. Once I got finished painting the iris, I went ahead and added some detail to the outside of the petals, which, like I said, ended up being a complete and total waste of time because by the time I got done, I didn't like the color and I ended up going ahead with a pink color. Now it's time to paint on those veins around the outside of the eyes. Okay, let's start working on the flower pot. I bought this cone at the dollar store. What I did was I went ahead and cut it in half and then just kind of slid it down into the top of the water bottle, and it was the perfect size and it held in there really well. Once you get that in, you're gonna want to go ahead and add some moss. I put a sheet down because moss is like super duper messy and I wanted easy cleanup. To glue my moss down, I used hot glue. I did this in a couple of phases. I put a little hot glue down and then I tipped the bottle back over to let out whatever moss didn't adhere as well as I needed it to, and then pulled off what wasn't completely adhered. And then I added a little bit more glue after putting a paintbrush in there for the stay so that I knew where I needed to place my flower. Okay, I went ahead and added a little bit of moss to the outside just so it kind of looks like the moss is spilling out and over the flower pot. I did this by running a small line of hot glue around the rim of the base, and then I trimmed off all of the excess. Now it's time to paint that pumpkin. I'm using the color Flame by Martha Stewart to paint the pumpkin. When I got completely finished painting this pumpkin, I wasn't completely happy with the color of the orange. So when you see the final product picture, I went ahead and did a light coat over that bright orange, just so it gave it a little bit more detail. I went ahead and added some orange in between each one of the little crevices on the base of the flower pot, just to give it a little bit of interest. Once I finished up with that, I went ahead and dry brushed over that with a little bit of black paint. Once we finish with that, we're all done making our flower. Just go ahead and insert your flower into the base, and there you have it, one spooky Halloween flower.